everybody, how's it going? I'm the Timmeister and welcome back to the Timbukton region. Today guys, we're going to be working on a quite large project. We're going to be expanding the town of Aspen and we're going to be developing its more touristic side. So if I can describe this area in very few words, I could say it's pretty much a replica of Cape Cod. So that's the sort of vibe this whole area is going to have. Initially, when I started to build it, I was basing the whole area off of some local cottage villages around my area. But the more that I progressed in the project, I thought to myself, like, holy crap, this looks exactly like Cape Cod type area. So I mean, that gives you an idea what the whole feel of the area is going to be like. So right now what I'm doing is just plopping down some summer homes, cottages. There's going to be some luxurious homes. There's going to be a pretty wide range of different things in this village. A little bit later on in the episode, we're going to get into a beach area. It's going to be the most densely compacted area of the villages, where you'll find like little gift shops and motels and all sorts of crazy things. So eventually we're going to create a bus line going from Aberdeen to here. We're going to get into a little bit of some traffic issues later on. Because the game doesn't really account for seasonal traffic, I suppose. This area is just busy 24/7. Like, the main artery road was just completely clogged by the time I finished this. So I decided to make a bus route, like a charter bus line from Aberdeen to this location, and eventually we'll create another bus line, maybe going into Timbukton. So those are just a couple of things that I've done to alleviate a little bit of the traffic. Over the course of the episode, you'll notice that some areas go through multiple revisions. Sometimes it takes me a couple of tries to get the look that I want, but for the most part this project was pretty seamless. Everything went pretty well. It's not, this sort of thing isn't something that I build very often, so it's sort of like a new style for me, and I think it went quite well, honestly. So right now I'm just plopping down some docks because in these sort of areas, mostly the wealthiest of people will usually have their own personal docks. Alright, so now that we've plopped down most of the homes that are going to be in this area, I'm going to go do a little bit of terraforming to get that sort of beach look. And because this map is custom made, by the way, if you haven't watched my tutorial that I posted the other day, I suggest you do so, because a lot of people ask me, how do I create these maps? Where do I get this Timbukton map? And the answer, as of now, I haven't uploaded it to the workshop, so it's not available. I really have to get on that, guys. But I eventually will post it on the workshop for you guys to download, because it's a pretty great map. So anyways, because this map is custom made using the Terrain Party website, everything is pretty jagged. All the coastlines in the region are pretty there's usually like a big cliff that just drops off. There's no gradient, there's no smooth gradient, so I have to do a lot of terraforming to get this map just right. It's generally something that I enjoy doing, so that's not really a big deal. So in regards to the beach area itself, I was trying to get the whole area to look like some local beaches near me, and what often happens is, because the land is so low in my area, you often get like these huge sand dunes along the coast, and that's the sort of thing that I wanted to create. Obviously this isn't going to be a very big beach. It's just the length of the end of this peninsula here, and you can sort of see that the whole area kind of looks like Cape Cod geographically too. It's pretty cool. So this is basically going to be it. I'm going to terraform the area just to get it to look a bit smoother. And just by looking at this photo, you can sort of get an idea of what I meant by these large sand dunes, because the area is so, the ground level is so low that it just sort of fans out into the water. It's not jagged like you would find in like parts of Maine and Nova Scotia, where it's right against the Atlantic Ocean. And as you saw me do a second ago, I used the sand tool underwater to create these sand dune ripple effects. I think it does a pretty good job, especially from afar. It looks pretty decent. And again, I'll repeat this probably a couple times during the episode. I'm not really aiming for, really fine details everywhere and going really deep into to the detailing with this project. Because the map is so huge, my goal for this is more to fill in the entire map with, forest or, whatever it may be. And I don't want to reach the prop limit halfway through the series, so I'm just sort of being careful what I plop down during the whole series. So forgive me if some areas look a little bit more bare than others. So now we're going to get started on the actual town, I guess downtown Aspen. So there's going to be a little parking area for the beach, some little gift shops, restaurants, all sorts of stuff. And this is probably the biggest area that goes through a large revision. So at one point I'd left this area to go work on another part of the series, because as you know, I like to switch tasks quite a bit. And a little mishap happened. The coal power plant that I plopped next to Aberdeen decided it wanted to go on strike, and this entire area was without power for like months in the game. And when I got back to work on this project, the whole town was basically wiped out. So that was back to square one for this particular area. Thankfully, it was only like this beach area specifically that was out of power for an extended period of time, so I didn't have too much reconstruction to do. But nonetheless, you'll see more towards the end of the episode what the final product is. And coincidentally, right after this mishap happened, I decided to go in the workshop to browse, just for fun. And while I was going through some pages on the workshop, I happened to notice a developer by the name of 220 Hertz had uploaded some props, not some props, but some assets, some buildings based off of ones in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, and I think Halifax, and a couple of areas in the Maritimes. So I'm only assuming he is a local Maritimer. So shout out to you, 220 Hertz. Your assets are absolutely amazing, and they'll fit pretty well into the series. So a little later on in the episode, I plop down a couple of his buildings, and it brings the whole area to life. Now this particular area that I'm working on is based off of what you would find in southern Maine or Massachusetts on like a sand dune type town. I'm not sure what the actual term is for it, but I'll show you a picture right here of Old Orchard Beach, which I visited last summer, and that sort of gave me the inspiration for this beach area. So what I've done to get this particular look that I wanted is I've made use of these, I think they're like Detroit shotgun houses assets, and I think they fit perfectly in this setting. Sure, if you look at them up close, you'll notice, they have like the barbed wire windows and all that, all that kind of stuff, but from afar you don't really notice it, and I think that they fit perfectly well in this sort of setting. So like I stated earlier, a lot of this town is going to be revised in the short future, and this building that I just plopped down will be completely changed for a new one. You guys have seen this building before in downtown Aberdeen, and I felt a little bit of guilt plopping it down again. I try to limit the amount of repeat buildings that I use in towns. In a really big city, I guess you don't have a choice because there's not a million different types of buildings in the game. But in a small town, you can definitely notice it. and that was sort of bugging me this whole time. So as soon as I found that little asset pack of buildings around my area, I thought that they would fit well in this location. You'll see in the cinematic shots that I've done a little later in the episode, they suit the area quite well. So what I'm going to work on now that I've pretty much completed the town, I'm going to do a little bit of terraforming, and I'm going to construct a little fishing marina type thing, little dock. Now, in order to protect the eroding land, it's important to place some rock barriers around, just to prevent that sort of thing from happening. Because after all, we are on a sand dune, and I can only assume that the land changes quite quickly without proper protection. So I'm just going to finish up the dock here, and what you're seeing right here is actually one of the coolest things that I recently subscribed to, and those are fairy protective barriers. I'm not exactly sure how to use them. I just sort of plop them down in a sort of way that looks kind of nice. But I believe that those sort of things are found next to ferry terminals to protect the ships from colliding with the dock or whatever. But I think that they fit perfectly well in this sort of situation. And in a couple of seconds here, I'm going to plop some here and there along the beach, as if there was an old pier or something there, an old dock. And I think it fits in quite well. Alright, so in just a couple minutes we're going to move on to the beach, but before then I want to do some finishing touches, and I've also got the idea to build a boat ramp in our marina that is currently missing, and I think that's a very important piece, especially in a marina like this, because right now the only one that we have is in Aberdeen, and I think we're due for another one. And to use that, and to build this ramp, I forgot what I had used in in Aberdeen. It's just a sort of ramp, and you're actually able to lower that into the ground, unlike the bridge sort of supports that I was trying to use there a second ago. But it works perfectly fine in this sort of setting. So now that that's done, I guess we can officially say that the marina is done, and we can move on to some other things. So right now I'm just going to add a little bit of fauna, and we're going to move right on along to the beach. Now, as for the fauna, I want to add sort of mixture between deciduous trees and pine trees, because this is a sort of like maritime Canadian / northern New England sort of setting, you typically get like a mix, especially like in northern Maine, you start to get a mix of deciduous and pine trees such as you see right now. And it's especially prominent in the Maritimes where I live. But now that we're all done that, we're going to move on to the beach. And the first thing I want to do on the beach is to create a large fishing pier similar to what you would find in Old Orchard Beach. And everybody knows whenever you go to Old Orchard Beach, you must visit the fishing pier. I forget what it's called, but it was really great. I loved it. The one in this video will certainly not be as grand as the one in Old Orchard Beach, but nevertheless it will be quite cute. I found this nice fisherman seafood restaurant on the workshop a little while ago, and there's actually this same building in Aberdeen, and I thought that it fit perfectly in this location. So that is pretty much the entire pier. Nothing too special about it. However, it sparked an idea for another larger, much more grand pier that's going to be in a later episode. I'm not too sure where or when you'll be able to see that, but it is in a little while, and I'm thinking of placing it closer to the actual city of Timbukton, making it like a large tourist attraction, because this town, the town of Aspen, you know, it's a town of maybe like a couple of thousand people during the summer and for like 50 people in the winter. So you know, it's not too much of a big city. So now I'm just gonna plop down a little bit of fauna, and we're gonna get right on to actual beach props. However, I sort of forgot to plop people. I was eventually gonna do that, and I only realized when I was pretty much done editing the videos, and unfortunately I didn't really have the time to go and edit that. So the beach is empty today because it was very cold, we'll say. Nonetheless, I think it looks great, especially with this texture mod, with all the little sand dunes and stuff. I think everything looks fantastic. And here is when I realized that there's a problem. The power, oh yeah, that was one problem. I fixed that problem quite quickly, and it just sort of escalated afterwards. So after the power plant fire was put out, another big problem popped up soon after, and coal imports were ceased in Timbukton for whatever reason, and the power plant was no longer operational, or at least it wasn't to its full capacity. And so about a good third or maybe a quarter of the entire population so far had no power for an extended period of time. So the entire eastern and western parts of Aberdeen were just abandoned when I went to check up on the town a couple of in-game days later. So that was sort of unfortunate. It left a lot of rework to do, but it gave me a chance to update the town a little bit, to plop some new buildings that I had downloaded, and I guess it was just a sort of refreshment for the entire town. So it was sort of like, you know, it wasn't all that bad. Also, as I've mentioned, the power outage affected this area quite awfully, and yeah, you'll see a little bit later in the episode what the final result is. I also found this really neat prop on the workshop. It's wet sand, and it helps to sort of blend in the textures a little bit. And to my own surprise, I went pretty heavy on the foliage in this area. I usually don't go too deep into that kind of stuff, like into bushes and grass. But in this area, I don't know, I just went to town with it, and the results are pretty amazing. Well, I mean, to me anyways. I mean, some of the stuff that you guys build out there, you know, I'm on the City Skylines Reddit quite often, and a lot of your creations are just amazing. Like, I can't even dream of making anything as remotely close to some of the stuff that you guys build. So that just about wraps it up, guys, and I just want to say I thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you did, please hit that like button. Also subscribe to the channel for much more content on the way, and until the next episode, guys, please take care.